We're in this series called Roar, and it's truth in the world of opinions. And so often you hear things that are kind of twisted, and people will bring up some verses in the Bible, and they kind of use it to the way they want to use it. And what we want to do is we want to kind of bring the truth back to those verses and have it to where people can get this better understanding of some of this stuff. How many of you, just as a question, want more money? Anybody in here want more money? How many of you guys, right? It's a trick question. I'm going to tell you right now. No. Underneath your seat right now is $100 underneath each chair. Now, nobody's actually looking. That's awesome. That's good. It's commonly misquoted. It says, in the Bible, people misquote it and they say money is the root of all evil. And that's really not the truth, right? That's not what it says, but you kind of hear that over and over again. Money's the root of evil. Money is the root of all evil. Money, 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 money. And it's not. It's a completely twisted understanding, and it's completely inaccurate. So if you go back to it and you read what it says, for the love of money, this is a root of all kinds of evil. For the love of money. Now, you may be following along. So we did print out some bulletin notes, but we're trying to go away from the bulletin itself. So please follow along on your app. But there's no fill in the blanks this week. It's just scripture to follow along with. So for the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Good news is, and most of us look at this and we go, that's not me. That's the good news. We go, that's not me. Some other greedy person loves money. That's really what it comes down to. We look at it and go, that's not me. It's some other greedy person. Somebody else loves money. Somebody else is dealing with that. How do we know if we love money? Big question, right? How do we know if we love money? Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. Years ago, we used to say that if I only made this, I'd be happy. If I only made this much more, I'd be happy. If I only had this, I'd be happy. And then you make that money and you go, if I'd only make this much more money, I'd be happy. If I only had this, I'd be happy. It's so often we get to this point and we go, if I only did this, and it's almost always completely out of reach. If I had this much more money. How much money do you need to be totally secure? It's a big question that we have to ask ourselves. How much money do you need to be totally secure? And then if you got that much money, you would go, I need more money to be completely secure. It's just kind of what happens. It's the natural thing of things. Now, what I want you to do is kind of look at this, and there's some scripture, and I want you to kind of step back, and I want you to be able to apply some of this. I don't want you to, this is not to guilt anybody, not to do anything like that. I just want you to be able to start applying this, because a lot of times we start moving forward, and we get kind of lost in what we're doing and what direction we're going. We just get kind of lost. We get kind of sideways when it becomes a money issue. It becomes, I have to have more money. I have to have this. And we want to kind of help divide that a little bit. But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world, and we can take nothing out of it. Now, I want you guys to think about something and start, and I've told you, and I've used this line, and it seems like I use it more and more frequently lately, is that every funeral I've done, each and every one of them, I've done some of them gravesite. I've done some of them where it's been the after they've been cremated. And the thing I will tell you is never once have I shown up and there's been a U-Haul with all of their stuff to go along with them. Never once. I've never shown up and they've had all their stuff. They're not getting buried with all of their things. But that's a lot of times how we live. We get to this point, we live like we're going to be taking all that stuff with us. It's like I've got to store all these treasures up in the attic because I'm going to take this with me. Now, there's difference of sentimental stuff, and then there's just, this hoarding. I like this theory. If you haven't touched something in 6 months, then give it to somebody else to use. If you have something that you haven't touched in 6 months, now there's decorations and stuff, you're not over there putting your hands on it, but if you've got usable stuff in your house and you haven't touched it in 6 months, you don't need it. You just don't. It's time. It's time to give it to somebody. It's time to let somebody else use it. Perfect example. At our house, we were gifted. It's like a baby food maker thing. It's like this green, comes with little jars, and it makes baby food. It purees everything. It's just a glorified blender, right? But neither one of my kids, if I tried to serve them something out of there, here, I want you to enjoy some of this blended up banana. They're going to laugh at me. And they're going to, my 5-year-old's going to look at me and go, I'm out of here. And so Why do we still have that? Every time I walk into the kitchen, I look up at it and I go, why is that here? What are we doing with that? I think we like to have stuff sometimes just to say we have it. You know, we have this because we like having it. Have you ever used it? Nope, not once. Once? Is that what it was? But that's how it gets. The Bible tells us in 1 Timothy, if you look at it, it says, but if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. The richest are not those that have the most. You know, if you start looking at the richest people are not those that have the most. They're the ones that need the least. Those are the ones that are the richest. The richest people need the least amount of stuff. Discontentment makes rich people poor. Just being discontent makes rich people poor, and contentment makes poor people rich. That's what happens. When we can get content and we can go, I like the stuff that I have, I like what I have, and it makes it to where we can actually become, because we're not always in this mindset of going, I have to get more, I have to get newer stuff, I have to get this. We just get to this mindset to where we can have what we have and be content with it. God's provided. See, the thing is that most of the time we go, see, God didn't say that you were going to get steak every night for dinner. He just said that you were going to get food. He said, I'll provide. I'll take care of you. I've already taken care of the birds and the bees. Why wouldn't I take care of you? Why wouldn't I take care of my favorite? Sometimes that means that you get steak once a week and Top Ramen the other 6. You know, that's just kind of what it means sometimes. And if you're a newlywed, if you've ever been through those, or even just, maybe it's just that you've been married for years and you're still going through this and you're going, we've been eating Top Ramen for years, but that's what happens is that you start getting content and you go, well, you can do a lot with Top Ramen. You just got to look at it a little differently. You got to look at it and go, we can do something different here. We can change things up. We can do things a little differently. Contentment makes poor people rich. Because a lot of times we feel poor, right? Isn't that what happens? Now, I know that you don't have to raise your hands, but I'm going to ask. If you just think about it, do you feel poor? Do you feel that sometimes? Do you feel poor? You go, I don't have any money in the bank, so I'm poor. The reality is that most of you, I know most of you in here, most of you have a home, have some place that you live at. Most of you have a car. Some of you have 2 or 3 cars. Some of you, you have the ability to put gasoline in the car every week. All those things you start looking at and you go, are you poor, or do we live outside of our means sometimes? Is that what happens? As we get to this point, we're doing things a little bit differently. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Look at this. Here's what happens is that you hit Powerball, right? You hit the lottery. You got $280 million in the bank. You go, I don't need God anymore. Guys, up until recently, almost 70% of people who won the lottery, like big numbers, they filed bankruptcy 5 years later. Up until recently. So you look at it and you go, what happens is they've been trying to find happiness in money, and they go spend and spend and spend and spend and spend and spend, and then you spend through $500 million within 5 years. Because you know how much money that's $1 million. You're talking $100,000 a day. Not that much, but it's pretty high. It's like maybe 20,000 a day. I don't know. 100,000 is too high. But that's what happens. You start looking at it and you start going, you're spending because you're trying to find happiness in things instead of finding happiness in God. Isn't that, as we get to this point, and this is where you start looking at this and you start going, what is the truth here? We're talking about this series as being a series of truth, finding truth through all of these misconceptions that people tell you. You start looking at it, you start going, do you know somebody who's kind of gone through something like that? Money hurt their family. Maybe money hurt their friendships. Maybe money, has destroyed something. And it almost sounds like money is bad. You start looking at this, it sounds like money can be bad. This is the way that the letter is written. And it's not bad to have money, don't get this wrong. But loving it is bad. When you make your decisions based upon money rather than what God wants you to do, there's something wrong. God has asked you to do something and you go, well, I can't do that because I'll lose this. I won't be able to do what God has asked me to do because I have to continue to maintain this earning potential. Or I got to be able to do this, or I got to do that. And what happens is you get over here, and God's asked you to do something, and sometimes it means doing something it's going to make you uncomfortable, but so rewarding. And this isn't, and I'll tell you right now, is that I'm not one of those prosperity gospel type pastors. I don't believe, you give, and I don't believe that the most righteous are rich, and if you have faith, God will bless you. I just don't preach that. That's just not, I don't see that anywhere in the Bible. I don't, because what I do see is that God says it's everything I've faced, or Jesus told us, everything I've faced, you're going to face this and more. You're going to be facing so much more than what I have. God gives us a means to our blessings. Money's supposed to serve us. We don't serve it. It's supposed to serve us. It allows us to do missions, and allows us to do ministry, and allows us to go out and really further the gospel everywhere and anywhere. That's what we're supposed to use money as. It's a tool. Now, I want you to think about this, is that, are we using money as a tool, or are we just using it as a means to finance our sin? Because that's what happens a lot of times. We end up using it as a means to finance all the things that are pulling us away from God. All the things that are pulling us away from that relationship. We use it as this means that, like, I can't afford to do that, or I can't do this, or I can't do what God's asked me because I have to be able to pay for this, or pay for that, or pay for whatever is going on that pulls us away. The Bible tells us, you read Matthew 8, in the Beatitudes, the most righteous are those who are poor. Remember the Lord your God, for it is He who gives you the ability to produce wealth. Having money isn't bad. Loving it is more dangerous than you can imagine. That's really what it comes down to. And it tells you, and when you start looking at this, it says, command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Some of you guys, right now, in your pocket, you have hundreds of dollars in technology. Sometimes we get up here, and just for an example, I'll use myself, just because I'm a good victim. I have an iPad, and mine's a newer one, so let's just say that's $700. I have an iPhone. Again, mine's a newer one. So let's say that's another $700. And I have an iWatch. I literally am wearing $1,600 in technology. I have $1,600, this is within my control, I have $1,600 in technology. And you look at this and go, man, broke. Really? What are you broke with? You're walking around with $2,000 in technology. And if I have my backpack with me, I got a MacBook Pro. That's another $2,000 there. We're walking around with $3,000 in technology, and we go, I have no money in the bank. Now, that's not the case with me, but I'm just saying is that's what happens a lot of times. I have some money, very little, but we have some in the bank. God has provided for us. God has said, hey, this is what we're going to do. And the thing is that sometimes we get so caught up into having all of this stuff that it makes us go poor. Sometimes we have to have the nicest car, the nicest house, the newest iPad, whatever it is. Most of us, we have these things. You have all this technology in your pocket. You drive a nice car. On your way here, you drove past 7 restaurants. And you probably, you can't decide which one your favorite one is and which one you're going to eat at. A lot of us, we get this opportunity. We get to park in the garage. You walk in the house, you turn on the TV. You have a climate-controlled house. You have air conditioning. You have heating. You have all this stuff. You have Netflix, Hulu, cable, internet. You have a closet that should never wear anything that's in it. You know, you just look at it and you go, that's all stuff that doesn't fit me anymore. You know, and then you touch it all and you go, I don't have anything to wear. You're rich. You guys, have you figured that out? You're rich. And it's one of these things, I don't feel rich. It's because you're looking at what you're rich in. Looking at the wrong stuff. Command those who are rich to be, in this present world, not to be arrogant, nor to put hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us for everything with our enjoyment. Why do we tend to put our hope in money? Why? Money only promises what God provides. Happiness comes from God. Security comes from God. The significance, some of us were looking for significance, we don't want that status, it only comes from God. It only comes from what God is doing. You know, you start looking at it, you start going, what is it that we're supposed to have? Which direction are we supposed to be going? And sometimes we go, why am I not happy? I don't know if you've noticed this country. I read a statistic almost last year, year before last maybe, is it's like they're writing more antidepressant prescriptions than ever right now. It's more than ever. I think I read a statistic that says they wrote almost 200 million prescriptions for antidepressants. So that's, I mean, you know, you got to account for renewals and stuff like that. But, you know, I figure that's like 50 or 60 million people that are on antidepressants in the United States. Maybe more than that. Maybe it's 100 million. There's only 300 million people here. 300 million people, and a third of them are depressed. And they're depressed so much that they need antidepressants. You know, and you start looking at this and you start thinking about it, and you start going, why? Which direction is it? It's because they're putting hope in things here. You know, they put hope in money, and when we don't have that, it causes stresses and tensions. It's the number one root of divorce, by the way, in America. Money is the number one root. It's not affairs, it's not lying, it's money. Money issues cause the arguments. Number one cause of divorce. And then you start looking at, and you start going, well, I'm going to find happiness in the stuff that I buy. So we buy a boat, and we buy an RV, and we buy this, and we buy that. And you don't find happiness in those things because all they do is collect dust in the driveway. They just sit there, and you go out there, and it costs money just to have them and not use them. So you have a boat, an RV, you have 2 cars, and a whole bunch of debt that goes along with it. And you start looking and go, well, I'm not happy, because you're trying to pay for happiness. Where happiness is only found in God. Happiness is only found in doing what God has asked you to do. There is so much joy to be found in going out and doing and serving and reaching our community and loving on people. So much joy in it. Ever notice on Christmas, for some of you guys that are adults, I don't see any children in here except for the one who doesn't, or 2, and one of them. Have you ever noticed on how nice it is and how much joy you get when giving? When you give those presents, when you give them to somebody else, it's almost awkward when you're receiving, right? You know, like for me, it's awkward because I go, you didn't know what to get me. I know this box is another tie. Thanks, you know. But that's the reality is that it's almost awkward sometimes. Or when somebody gets you like a really nice gift, you go, you spent too much on me. I was not worthy of that. You spent too much on me. Isn't that what happens? Somebody gets you a really nice gift, and you go, well, don't get me wrong. My wife, I get her jewelry, she's ecstatic. She's like, woohoo, you love me. I go, no, baby, I love you. I got you the jewelry because I wanted to hear you say that you love me too. But what happens is that, but those are the things that you get that, for me, I feel it. I go, when somebody gives me, like a couple of years ago, the memory popped up on Facebook, is that this church sent me on a vacation. They're like, you have to take a vacation, Mike, and they paid for it. A group of people got together and paid to send us to Bodega Bay. I got up here, I was in tears because I didn't feel worthy of that. I didn't feel worthy because that gift is just, and for me, I just look at it and I go, I don't deserve that. I should be giving and giving back and doing, because God has blessed me with so much already. God's given so much to me. I just find pure joy in the stuff I already have. You know, sometimes I walk through some of these newer houses. Anybody in here watch HGTV? Anybody? Don't lie. I know all of you guys are watching it and going, woo. I wanted that house. And sometimes I watch those things and I go, man, I'd love that type of thing. But the reality is you watch it, some of those shows, they show them in places that nobody wants to live. That's the reason why the houses are really cheap. When you're looking at it, nobody wants to live there. The other thing is that some of that stuff is so far out that puts you so much into debt and you're trying to go, I'm going to pay for this house. Let me tell you is that, and our house, Melissa and I, we bought our house, and we were approved for much greater financing but we knew that we were going to be in ministry. We knew that we were going to do what God had asked us to do and go, hey, let's get into ministry. And so we started planning to be in ministry before we were in ministry, before we go, hey, we're going to do full-time ministry work, because I thought that I wasn't going to make anything. Like, I just was willing to do this for whatever and be free. I didn't care. That's what I wanted to do. And so we started looking for a home. I said, babe, we got to find a house that I can make the payment on if I just go mow lawns. I said, that's what we got to find. And so we went looking, and our real estate agent just kept taking us all these different places. And she goes, this would be great for you. And I go, yeah, it's like $75,000 over what we want to pay. But you're approved up to that. You're approved for even greater than this. I go, that's not the point. We have these other plans. We have things that we have to do in our life. Doesn't matter if we're approved for that amount. We need to do these. We have this calling. So we went looking, and we found this house that we live in now. And so we walked into it. And now, granted, it wasn't beautiful to walk into. You walked in and you knew that you had to do work. You knew that there was going to be, like they got a little weird and started painting colors here. And they go, no, it's not going to work. And then like right next to it, painted another color. And I go, that one's not going to work either. Painted another color right after that. It was like, it was really weird. And so I go through all that. And we go, yeah, and the house was $100,000. That's how much it was, $100,000. So we said, yep, let's do it. And so we started moving forward with it. We bought the house. We didn't know what the payment was going to be. We didn't know any of those things. And then our house payment, we talked to we're going to sign all the docs and getting everything together. And our house payment, they go, yeah, it's going to be $684 a month. How much? $684. You can't rent for that much here. You can't find a place to rent for that much here. So we bought this house. We've lived in it for 6 years now. And this is how much God blesses. Is it the most beautiful house? No, it's not. In fact, some people call it, you drive past it, you go, man, somebody really just cut the grass there, because sometimes I just don't have the time to do it. And but we paid $100,000 for it. It just appraised at $305,000. So we have roughly $240,000 in equity in our home that we walked into, and we go, we want to be able to do ministry, and we want God to be able to provide. And God has done that. God has said, here's what's going to happen. And so sometimes having to settle and step back and go, I don't need to spend that much money, helps us actually build more wealth later in the long run. Now, I'm not saying, and I don't want to, I'm not trying to make anybody feel guilty. I know some people just went through and bought a house recently, and that's not what I'm trying to do here at all. What I am trying to do is just give you an example of what I went through and how God has blessed when I stepped back and I said, look, we have to make sure that we're going to do what God has asked us to do and be able to afford that. If I don't make any money, I got to be able to go do something to be able to pay for this, to be able to take care of this, to make sure that, and God just says, I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to deliver. He delivered so much that I didn't get paid by the church for the first 2 years of ever doing ministry. It took not one single paycheck. It wasn't until the board got together and said, hey, you got to start taking a paycheck. You're paying everybody else here. You got to be paid. But for me, I go, God's providing. I don't need it. He's taking care of us. Sometimes you got to step back and go, am I doing what God has asked me to do? Or am I pursuing this happiness that maybe isn't even there? That it's like a pipe dream. It's just a reach. It's always after this. We go, I need more money. I need to make more money. And it's the devil deceiving you is what's happening. Money is not the answer to our deepest needs. Jesus is. Money is not the answer. Jesus is the answer to our deepest needs. When we pursue Jesus, we find so much greater joy, so much more happiness in serving. When you start thinking you need more money, just start going, I need more Jesus. That's what you go. We need more money. No, I need more Jesus. I'll pursue that. More Jesus, less of this world, right? More of Jesus, less of this world. Now, are you not supposed to have nice things? No, you are supposed to have nice things. You are. Just don't love those nice things. Don't hold on to them and go, that's the ultimate best treasure. No, it's not. It's not. Jesus is the best treasure. That's who you're going to spend eternity with. Not the things. You're not going to be spending eternity with the things. Command them to do good and be rich in good deeds, and to be generous and willing to share. In this way, they will lay up treasures for themselves as a firm foundation for the coming age, so they may take hold of the life that is truly life. Isn't that what we want? Don't we want the life that is truly life? You know, do we want this? The Bible tells us we can serve one of two masters. One of two. You can serve money, you can serve God. I'll give you my journey, okay? So, when we first went back to church, I was afraid of tithing. Anybody in here, do you ever get to that point where you're afraid of tithing? Because I get afraid of tithing. I did. I was like, I can't give that. How are we going to pay for everything? How's this going to happen? So I was afraid. And I would sit down, and the people next to me, I'd watch them make out their check, and I go, that's enough for all of us, so we're good. And I'd pass the bucket by, and it was like awkward when the bucket landed on my lap, and I'd be like, yeah, no, kink, and move it on. And so you get to that point, but what I found is that I was really emotionally tied to money. I was like, I got to have money. I have to have this. I was emotionally tied to it. And I will also tell you the other thing that I used to have a really big issue with is that so when we first drove up to church, I would get there and I'd drop Melissa off at the door, and then I'd go back to the parking lot, and I'd sit in the parking lot, I'd look at my watch and be like, 20 minutes is up, all right, let's go in. I would never sit through the worship. I'd miss out on all the worship, and so I would only show up just for the teaching portion. I'd get just the message portion and not the worship, where people are in their worship. I'd just get the teaching to where it's being poured into, but not really worshiping God. And so what I found was that when I started saying, hey, I have to make this switch, I have to make this transition, and so I started coming in and worshiping God. I actually came in and started singing and worshiping and being joyful, that I became less and less attached to the faith, to the money, to everything else that was coming. I became less and less attached to it, and became more and more attached to the worshiping and knowing that me giving is an act of worship. It's an act of giving back and going, God, I know that you're going to provide. I know that you're going to take care of me. I believe that your word says that I have provided for the birds and bees, that I will bless you and take care of you as well. And I go, no. I was so tied to it. And then with this change, where I looked at it as an act of worship, and I go, man, it just made so much. You know, when we left the church, they were in the middle of a building campaign. And we made a commitment. We said, hey, we'll give this amount of money every week or whatever it was. And we made this commitment to be able to and so when we left, we continued with that building campaign commitment because we knew that it was going to be a place of worship for others, that we knew that we'd be able to continue to help pour into. And even though that we weren't there anymore, we were still helping and just knowing that we were taking care of things. Even, you know, I mean, guys, I just look at it, and it's changed so much of it. Most of us, we don't have emotion tied to our spending. We just don't. We just spend money. You know, a lot of times we get to this point and we use these, right? You know, we've gotten to this point to where everywhere we go, I would flip it around. The bad part is we're recording and it's in HD, and so somebody would end up with my credit card number out there someplace along the line. Hello, online campus. Not that you'd steal it, but we have 900 people who watch it a week. So anyway, we tend to, when you go pay for gas, do you use cash or do you use credit? Your debit card. You use your debit card, right? You're like, I don't even carry cash anymore. And see, the thing is that the removal of cash out of your hand has taken the emotion out of actually spending money. I don't know if you know that or not. Because this is nothing, right? You can cut this up. You can easily, I'll cut this in half, right? Cut a credit card in half. They'll send me a new one. Anybody got a 20 on them we can shred right now? There's a little more emotion right there, right? Isn't that become a little difficult? You know, hey, let's go shred the $20 bill up. I mean, granted, you can put it all back in an envelope and send it off and they'll replace it. But the reality is that it's got emotion connect to it. It's different. It feels different when you're using it. I tell, Dave Ramsey, and we're firm believers of financial peace here, and so we teach it, we do it twice a year, and so we highly encourage you to use it. But one of the things is that he says, you have to get back to this point of spending cash. You have to go back to it. Not to spend cash for everything, but if you set your grocery budget at $300, put $300 in cash in your grocery budget and walk in and know that you're not going to spend any more than that. Because here's what happens. If you spent your budget at $310 or $300 and you're at the grocery store and your budget and you end up spending $350, well, you still swipe your card. You go, we'll figure it out later. You swipe your card. Well, if you walked in and you only had $300 in cash and your budget is and it comes out to $340, you start looking and go, all right, what are we putting back? You start figuring it out. You start looking at it and go, let's put that back and let's put this back. And what does that come out to? It changes how we start interacting with money, and it makes it to where we are managing the money, not the money managing us. And so that's what happens a lot of times is we end up being managed by money. You don't have this emotional attachment to it. I've always had this thing is that, you ever get a $100 bill and you go, ooh, I'm not spending that yet, because as soon as I break it, ding, 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 all the other 20s are gone right afterwards. That's what happens. All of them just go away. So you hold on to that 100. It's an emotional attachment to it. That's what we need to get back to, is having that emotion that's involved in it. Give you another example. Melissa's in the process of trying to start this project. We're trying to put together Ruth's Refuge. And you start looking at this, and we're trying to put together, and we know that there's a need. So right now, we know there's a need. So as of this last week, we know right now that there is 12 women on a waiting list for a bed at Mission Solano. Or no, it's 12 at Heather House, and there's 22 at Mission Solano, and they're separate names. So we're talking 34 people that are on the streets that are women that need help. And so we know, and so it becomes an emotional thing for us. And we start looking and going, how do we make this happen? How do we get to this point to where we can make these things and make it a reality? And Melissa goes, Melissa's not a business person at all. Melissa's very spiritually driven, and she's looking at this and go, God will provide and God will lead me, and we'll go through prayer on this. And so going through prayer and everything, I'm just lost. And it becomes emotional. She's tied to it because she wants to be able to help. She's like, I know that this is what I'm supposed to do. And she becomes emotionally tied to it. And so everything about it, she's like, and sometimes it brings her, she feels so emotionally tied to it that it brings her to tears when we can't actually produce, when we can't go the direction that we want to go with it. And you start looking at this, there's emotion involved in it. It stirs this passion. And it goes, I want to do what God has asked me to do. And that emotion drives us. What are you emotional about? What is it that carries that emotion within you? When you start looking at this and you go, I can promise you, when you look at this, you're not emotional about your job. I mean, unless you're self-employed and you have your own business, you go, there is emotion there. But if you're just showing up to work and you're hitting the clock, you're not emotional about it. You're like, I'll find another job. And now it's a little easier. Well, like a couple of years ago, you're like, I can't go anywhere. I have to stay here. There's no other jobs out there. But your mindset starts changing when you become emotional about it. You get tied to it. You start going, you start pursuing those passions. What is it that and I tell people, what is it that when you go out and you see something that's happening to people? For my wife, it's when you see women that are in the streets or sleeping in the park. Oh God, I'm going to tell you, it's heartbreaking. It is. And just to see anybody going through that, it's heartbreaking. But it's really hard when you see somebody who's a woman and they have their children out there, and like we see this family that's out there they've been out there like 3 years. And it's like, what's going on? What's happened? And it just stirs these emotions, and it makes it to where you go, but what is it that you go out there and you get angry about? You see somebody being mistreated. You see people that talk about school bullies. But, we just go, bullying's bad. But then what do you do to actually help that? Or where's that emotion at? Or where are you trying to, or do you just go, it's bad, and post it on Facebook, and that's it. That's the end of it. Or do you look and go, I need to be doing something about it? And you see children that are being neglected. You go, I got to do something about that, and start being passionate and start moving towards that. Or do you just go, somebody should do something about that? Matthew West has a great song out there, and he goes, God, why aren't you doing something about this? And he said, I did. I sent you. I sent you here for it. What is it that God has sent you for that you keep going? Somebody should take care of that. Somebody should fix that. Somebody else should be doing this. And you go, Why isn't this happening? Well, because God has maybe already provided you with the resources for it. Maybe God's already given you everything that needs to happen to start that ministry. And you've gone, oh, no. I can't give up my iPhone. I can't do that. I can't give up cable TV. I can't give up these things to do what God has asked me to do. I can't do this to actually find joy where I know that there's joy in giving to others, where I know there's happiness in this. No. Got to have this. That's where our mindset gets. I was just talking to my brother-in-law this morning, and he was telling me about some cuts that they're making and some changes that they're making in life in order to be able to do things. And he goes, we're cutting rid of the cable. I go, oh, okay. I said, what are you going to do to watch TV? He said, TV is not my existence. He said, there's books. He said, if I want to watch TV, I'll go get a DVD. He said, I'll go rent a movie. He said, I'll go do those things. He's all, and I was like, man. I said, how do you get on Facebook? He's all, Facebook? He said, why is that important? And he pulled out his phone. I go, and he's got an old, and I'm not making fun. The thing is that it created one of these things that I just go, man, it makes me proud of what he's doing, because he pulls out his phone, and his phone is like an old Nokia flip phone. I mean, and it's, you look at it and go, they still make those? And I use it as a joke, but I looked at it, and I go, well, how much does that cost? He's all, it's $20 a month. And I go, he's all, I can text message with it. I can make phone calls. He's all, what else do I need it to do? It's a phone. Right? You start looking at it, and you start going, well, but you're giving up so much other stuff. He goes, I haven't given up anything. I'm just doing what's more important. He's all, providing, taking care of it, having a roof over my head. It's more important than a phone. He's all, there's a library. There's all that stuff. He's all, there's greater things. And I go, man, you go preach. Here are my notes. See you later, buddy. Being rich, it's not wrong having money. It's not. It's what you do with it. The love of money is what really causes the problem. The going, I have to have more. I have to have this. We're called to do good. That's what we're called. We're called to do good, to love, and to be generous. It says, do good deeds. Be generous. Not go, I've been generous with all of this stuff. I've been generous to Apple. Been generous to whatever your cell phone company is. I've been generous to all of them. I've been generous to these things. But I haven't been generous with God and going, I want to be able to take care of my community. I want to do what he's asked me to do, to love others. And a lot of times, I don't have time for that. Well, why not? We don't have time to love others because we're so busy sacrificing to pay for our homes or to pay for the debt that we carry. Or we pay for all these, we're so busy that we go, that we just can't get things done. And I'll tell you is that, and I'll give you my last example, and shut my mouth. I told you guys over the last couple of weeks, my son, I tell him good morning, and I love you, buddy, and he takes off. I'm like, man, what is the deal? What is going on? And so over the last couple of weeks, kind of been a shift in our house. So obviously, definitely the last 2 weeks, my daughter has gone to the Army, and so we've heard from her a couple times, and she's doing as well as can be expected, right? So she missed home because she's never been gone for 2 weeks, and she did say that the drill sergeants are nothing compared to me, but so she's got it easy that way, I guess. But the thing is that it's caused a dramatic change in our house, is because my schedule no longer has this fluid. It no longer has, hey, I got to go to the store real quick. I'll be back. It's like, all right, guys, we got to get dressed. We got to go, and everybody get in the car. Let's go. And so it's changed how much time that we interact with one another. And so instead of me running around and going out and just doing whatever, my time now at home has become time at home. I spend more time and I focus time at home and with my children, and my kids get this different experience with me. They have this whole different, because we've made something else a priority. It's not that we've taken away other priorities. We just go, this is a priority because it kind of worked out that way. So over the last couple of weeks, my kids now, both of them, every night before they go to bed, they come up to me, Daddy, I love you. They give me a kiss and a hug, and both of them. Now, the one doesn't go, I hate you, and then kiss me. No, he comes up, gives me, I love you, Daddy, and gives me a hug. Huge strides in the last 2 weeks. We haven't had as many emotional breakdowns. We've had so much more positive interaction over the last couple of weeks that it's been just amazing on just how the transformation comes when we focus on what's most important. You start looking at this and you start going, in your life, there's priority levels. There's things that you have to start looking and go, what direction is it? And so what I like to say is that you have to, for me, I put God first, right? God's number one. Number two is my wife, because she helps me and she helps me persevere through all these things and she helps me get through this. So number two is my wife. So God, wife, kids. That's where I'm at. I no place above there is my job. I don't put job, and if I wasn't working here, it would still go God. That doesn't mean church. That means God, wife, kids. I then would put my church. That's how the priorities would go down. So if God has asked me to do something, I'm going to do it. If my wife asked me to do something, I'm going to do it. I want to stay happy, so I'm going to do it. If my kids ask me to do something and something comes up, I'm going to do it. And those things are all going to take priority over my job. So those are the things you have to look at and go, is that the priority level? Or this is your job call. You go, I got to drop the family. I got to do this. I got to do all that and go take care of that. Or does your priority go, I have to, there's definitely a chain of command there. Are we living within that chain of command and doing what God has asked us to do? Or are we storing up the good deeds for Him? And then you start looking at community and loving it. Where does that all break down? What does your top 10 look like? If you started prioritizing, what does your top 10 look like? Is your top 10, I got to do this, and this, and then family comes in, and this comes in? Because then you start finding is that you're trying to become rich, and you've taken your focus. And if you go back to, I just want to go back to one verse in here. Because it asks us, there's this question, how do we know if we love money? Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth never is satisfied with their income. And that's what we start looking at. We start going, how do I get back to this point where I am satisfied with what God has given me. I am satisfied with what God is doing. Now don't get me wrong, there's always things that come up in life where you go, I got to change. I've got to have this happen. I got to, this going on or that's going on. There's also change of seasons, job change, because you know that you're called to do more. You know that God has asked you to do something else. There's these things that happen, and we have to look at it and go, how do I pursue those things and still stay within doing what God has asked me to do? I know sometimes my message doesn't always feel good and happy and laughing, but sometimes we have to have these messages where we sit down and we really take an assessment and we look and go, what is it that's really important? What is it that's important? Guys, and I want to tell you, I'll ask this question, is how did the first half of 2016 go? Because this is the first Sunday in the second half. How was the first half? And you start looking at the first half and you go, well, the first half was amazing. Well, what did you put first? What did you have going? What did you have going on in these different directions? And if you look at the first half and you go, some things really needed to change. Well, our God is a God of second chances, and our God is a God of new beginnings. And what I'll tell you is that maybe today is that start and going, I want to make the second half a better year. I want to make the second half I want to go off and I want to put God first. I want to make sure that my family becomes second. And I want to make sure that I'm starting to do what God has asked me to do and going in that direction. Because so often we put the job up there above everything else and the pursuit of money. And it actually isn't fulfilling us. It isn't helping us, and it isn't driving us in the direction that we're supposed to go. Small change could start here today. Let's pray. Father, maybe the first half of this year, maybe in the beginning of 2015 or just in the past, I haven't put you first. I continue to put myself first and the pursuit of these earthly things first, and I instead of putting you first in my serving you, doing what you've asked me to do, being able to give back and be generous, continue to do what I wanted to do, and I felt lost. I felt empty. I felt that I've just been the rat in the wheel that just keeps running and not really moving and not going forward. And Father, I want 2016 to be different. I want the second half to start seeing you flourish in my life. And I know that starts by putting you first. I know by putting you first in my life, I can start pursuing things that matter to you rather than these earthly desires that take me away from the relationship with you. Father, I know that I've sinned and it's pulled me away. That maybe I haven't spent enough time in the Word, or maybe I haven't spent enough time in prayer. God, I want to change those. I want to go from giving you the leftovers to giving you the first. So, Father, we ask for strength. We ask for forgiveness. We ask for that newness that's promised to those who believe. Father, we're asking to have that all washed away. To make the rest of this year different. To make the rest of this year joyous. So we start planning for what's up ahead rather than reacting to what's already happened. Father, thank you. It's in your Son, Jesus' name, that we pray. Amen.